y'all. We're hosting a live today with Alexis Devine, mom to Bunny and Otter, who you have probably on Instagram before. Hey, Alexis.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for doing this. So
Oh,
excited.
of course. I'm super excited too. I can't wait for Dog Science Week. It's going to be so much fun. I see that some of my friends are presenting. It's going to be just a total blast.
Yeah, it's such a small world. When you think about the dog science community, everyone knows each other. I love it.
I do too. Yeah, it's a really fun community to be a part of. I feel really lucky considering that I'm not a scientist. I'm sort of like science adjacent. So I find myself very fortunate to be a part of the community.
I love how people are commenting. They're like, "Where's Bunny?"
Oh my gosh. Where's the dog? Now she's downstairs because I wouldn't get anything. I wouldn't be able to communicate with you if they were in the room right now. Otter is a teenage nightmare at the moment. And well, Bunny's asleep, but if I went downstairs, she'd just be like, licking my face.
Yeah. No, we'll let the kids keep their routines so the adults can have a conversation.
Solid.
Sounds like people are having difficulty with our volume.
Uh-oh.
Disconnect my AirPods and see if that helps. Well, now people may be subjected to Manhattan street noises, so
Fun.
hopefully it's going to be okay.
Love it.
But thanks again for doing this. For the folks who are not aware, we're hosting Dog Science Week next week, and I'll drop a link to that in the comment box so you folks can join us if you're able to. But Alexis was one of our presenters, actually, and she's going to do a talk about her journey with Bunny and Otter and why she went down this path, because I love how people are like, do you think Bunny's actually communicating? And I'm sure you get asked that question a lot. But let's start with like the basics, because I think I'm actually curious about you. What got you interested in this idea of communicating with dogs? Like, did you grow up with dogs? Is this something you were always thinking about? Or tell us.
Not even remotely. Like I have like one core memory of a dog, which after hearing it, you'd think I would have been dissuaded from having a dog ever in my life. But I was like 7 or 8 and I was like camping with my parents. We had this lime green VW camper van and we were on the top of this mountain and there was like another family that was camped over there. And I just like trotted over to say hello. They had this huge bonfire going. And I was like looking at the bonfire. I was like, oh, fun. I turned around and there's this giant Cerebus looking dog. I mean, he didn't have 3 heads, but to me, he might as well have. He was like the size of a horse. He was like chained to this tree. And I'm sure he was like totally friendly and sweet, but he started walking towards me and I was terrified. So I backed up and like fell into the fire and like really severely burned the palm of my hand. So that was my like most formative memory of a dog. Flash forward, 30 years later, I'm like, I need a dog. I'd had a couple as a child, but they weren't really my dogs. I was really young. They were sort of family dogs. And I hadn't sort of been in a position to have a dog prior to that because I recognized what a huge commitment it was. Finally, I was in a place in my life where I was like, I think we should get a dog. Johnny was like, no, we've got cats. So I waited a year and then I was like, I think we should get a dog. Same story. Finally, he's like, okay. So I was like, yeah. And my goal was just to have the most connected relationship possible with a non-human animal, and to sort of test the bounds of what was possible in terms of our communication. I didn't know anything about dog training. I didn't know anything about canine behavior. I didn't know the difference between like operant and classical conditioning or anything like that. But I got a dog. And I had come across Christina Hunger's work. She's the speech language pathologist that was doing the buttons with her own dog, Stella. And I was like, that's incredible. I should add that to my list of things to try with Bunny to have this relationship, this like ideal, perfect relationship. So I had an outside button waiting for her by the door when I brought her home with no expectation of success, as I didn't have a background in canine behavior or in dog training or in speech language pathology. But I am incredibly tenacious. I'm incredibly creative, and I have insatiable curiosity. So I think a combination of those 3 things allowed me to press forward in a way that that's allowed us to be where I am now. And when she started consistently using the outside button, I was like, well, if she can do one button, she can probably do two. When she had two, if she can do two, she can do 10. If she can do 10, she can do 20. And when she was at 20 buttons, I was like, sky's the limit. This is bonkers. Let's just see what happens. It's a huge what if. And it's been a really fun exploration for me of what is possible in terms of connection and communication. And the side benefit has been that it has really deeply inspired me to learn everything I can about dogs, about canine behavior. So I'm enrolled in all of these courses right now. I'm learning as much as I can. The more I know, the more I realize how little I know. And it's just been a really, really wonderful journey from start to finish. And I feel very, very lucky that I'm able to do this full time now.
That's amazing. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that tenacity piece. I mean, there's a lot you said that I want to talk about, but it's really hard because you're not a trainer. You are a dog parent, and there's obviously human emotion involved where we sort of project what we want on our dogs. There's like a bit of a mindset here, right? Where you have to sort of think about like, how do you persist on days that maybe she's not interested in playing, or you have two dogs, so they probably have different personalities, different learning styles. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like how do you sort of navigate those pieces of it?
Sure. So I think some of the factors that have helped Bunny's eagerness to communicate in this way are, one, she's extraordinarily sensitive, right? So I think communication has sort of become intrinsically reinforcing to her because she has a lot of very big feelings is what it looks like to me. And so being able to communicate about those and sort of relate to me during those moments, I feel like has been really important to her. Otter, completely different temperament. He is just balls to the wall, energy, goofy. And right now he seems hell-bent on like search and destroy with the buttons. That's his like modus operandi. So he's less interested right now in communicating with them than he is in like, what is this fun toy that has all these little bits that I can pull off? So, we're working through a sort of adolescent phase. What was the first part of that question? I forget it.
Especially around the tenacity piece. You said you're a very tenacious person and that you persist. And that's like not always the easiest when you don't know exactly the outcome of something.
Yes.
It's actually a very scientific thing, right? Like you develop a hypothesis and you work towards figuring out if it's true. But if you're not tenacious, you might give up before you figure out the result of the experiment.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious like how you stick with it, because were the early days hard? And then also once you started training Otter, you're describing these differences. How do you stick with that, right? Because this is like, you're doing this all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of us give up.
The early days were like very confusing. And like I said, I didn't know what to expect, but once I saw a little bit of success, right, I was like, this is really interesting. And then I learned more about behavior and I was like, oh, it's quite simple. In the same way that a dog would learn to use a bell to go outside, just build that connection. Outside, press the button, outside, they go outside. Same. So the really out of the box sort of thinking started to happen when she had enough buttons that not all of her presses made immediate sense to me. Right? So there was a lot of sort of like putting puzzle pieces together where I had to think about what in this moment could she be wanting to express, and how do I help her do that? So there's a lot of like teamwork between me and Bunny where she'll press something. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe it wasn't. I need to reinforce that nonetheless so that she can understand what those buttons mean. Because if she doesn't understand what they mean and therefore is saying something that doesn't make sense, I got to make sure that those buttons then make sense to her. So there's sort of this like back and forth where she maybe is doing some exploration, pressing a combination of buttons that I haven't heard her use before. I reinforce that. I'm like, okay, we're going to go with this. And then we'll do this sort of back and forth. And eventually you can sort of see this light bulb moment. She's like, oh, I get it. So she does a lot of exploration in that sense, where as soon as I add a new button, she uses it. She'll use it once. She'll look at me. What does this mean? I'll use it in context with some other words that she knows. And then maybe she'll use it in these other contexts that don't make sense. And I'll like redirect her to a different combination of buttons. So it really is a collaborative process. And I think in terms of the specific tenacity with the buttons, my curiosity is leading the charge, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I've had conversations about Bunny's dreams, it seems. So yeah, if that's possible, what else is possible? If she's able to tell me when and where she's in pain, there's no reason for me not to continue mm-hmm. going forward with as much fervor as I have thus far, right? And if we find out that this is all a case of clever Hans, which I don't think it is, it will not have been for nothing, right? Because this interaction that I have, this feedback loop that I have with Bunny and the buttons, if nothing else, has taught me so much about canine behavior. I've had to learn so much in order to really, really understand how she is communicating intrinsically, because that's at the heart of it, right? If we're not taking the time to listen to our dogs, what is their impetus to then communicate with us? We have to know them. And in order to know them, we have to really, really listen.
That was so beautifully said. I love it. Thank you. I think that was, I'm sure, because I think we do read these articles and people are like, oh, what about clever Hans? But I 100% agree. It's still worth it because you are getting to know your companion, your child. To many of us, they're children. And what a wonderful way to connect with them and give them that opportunity to tell us what they're feeling instead of us constantly like asking them stuff, right? A few people commented on that as well. Someone was like, this was beautiful. So I think you're definitely tearing a few of us up over here. I guess I want to switch gears very slightly because I know I stalked you a little bit on the interwebs and you have a whole other life where you are an artist and a designer and you make beautiful jewelry. And I think at some point you told me, you know, it's like about combining the art and the science, right? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think artists and scientists at their core are looking for hidden, deeper truths, right? And art for me was certainly that. It is certainly that, although my focus has shifted. Like what I do with Bunny and Otter has become my creative passion now. Like you said, before I got Bunny, I was a full-time wearable art designer and I had a jewelry line and I was showing at New York Fashion Week. And I learned a lot from that. It exposed some of my inner truths that I don't think I would have been able to access before that. And I think the scientific process and the artistic process, while separate, both contain tremendous amounts of creativity, because in order to develop a theory that's so outside of the box that it has the potential to be paradigm shifting, you have to get creative, right? And there's a different process, but I think in the end, whether we're discovering hidden personal truths or hidden truths about the universe, it's a process of moving forward in terms of what we know and how we know, and how we view ourselves in the world. So that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because I think a lot of us neglect to think about the role that creativity plays in science. Because you have to imagine what's not available yet, like what's not possible, right?
Totally.
And how can you do that if you're not a creative person? I guess a follow-up question to that is, so now you're doing this full time. It's still a lot of work, I bet. How do you structure your time, you know, with the pups in terms of like teaching them new stuff, practicing stuff, doing other activities that I presume that they're also doing? Like, what does that look like?
How do I structure my time? Very poorly. I'm not great at that. I have 17 million things I want to do and I want to learn all the things. And it's just sort of a roller coaster. I don't have a set schedule. I should. But so sort of what a day will look like is we'll get up and we'll go for a walk first thing. Because then I'll have a chunk of time to work while my lovely pets are sleeping, right? So I'll take like an hour and a half long walk, come home, I'll do some studying or some other work. And then once they sort of wake up from their naps, I'll do some training with them individually, and then I'll do some training with them together, which is trickier because I'm still teaching Otter how to settle while I work with Bunny. And then they'll take another little nap. And then I'll do some more studying. Maybe I'll like make a YouTube video. Maybe I'll respond to emails. And then more engagement with the dogs, maybe some enrichment for them. So it's sort of, yeah, I guess it's sort of like an on and off, like doggies work, doggies work, doggies work. With sort of a heavier focus on dogs at the moment because Bunny's reactive. So I'm working very, very hard with her to change some of those emotions. And Otter is a teenager, so I'm working very, very hard with him on impulse control. So there's a lot of that throughout the day. So it's just sort of like a back and forth. But I find if I structure things too much, then I get less done because I get frustrated that I can't keep on the schedule that I had initially set up in my brain. So
I love that because I think sometimes we set like these really big goals for ourselves, and then because of that for the dogs as well, and then life gets in the way, right? Because they're like, you have an adolescent dog who clearly has a mind of his own.
Oh my gosh, people think puppies are hard, right? I always hear, oh, puppies are so hard, it's so hard, and then you've got like a year to 2 years of adolescence. I'm like, that's what's hard. Puppies are like tiny and cute and just love you and sometimes bite you, but teenagers, they like forget everything they've learned. They resist with every turn. Their mission in life is to like see if they can get a rise out of you. That's what it feels like, at least. But I did it once. I'm sure I'll be able to do it again.
I 100%, given how much work and effort you put into Bunny, which was, I think, one of the joys of the pandemic for a lot of us to just watch, right? And I remember thinking pretty much, it's like, how is she doing this every day? Because that's dedication, right? Not only doing the work, but then like actually sharing it with the rest of us. And you were inspiring all these other accounts to follow you and, you know, to even consider the possibility, I think is so awesome.
I think, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think at a certain point, it just became so woven into the fabric of our days that it didn't, because I didn't even, when you were talking about my schedule, I didn't even mention buttons. And I realized that after the fact. But it's become so woven into the fabric of our days that it doesn't feel like a task. And I don't have human children, but, you know, and this is actually something people ask me this a lot, like, what is your process? Like, how do you do this? And I get really frustrated with myself because I don't have like a good, cool answer. I'm like, I just did. Like, I kind of feel like if I had a human child and I was teaching them how to speak and they didn't have a voice, this is what I would do, right? I would say things and I would just, this is a banana, press the button, banana, banana, banana. Weave it in when applicable throughout the day and hope that learning occurs. And how could it not? Because animals are very, very intelligent. And it did sort of work out that way. And it does sort of work out that way for me. I think that had I had a strong history in animal behavior and dog training, it may have impeded the process a bit because I would have had some like bounds or some limits to what I thought or knew was possible. And not having that, I'm just like, well, let's see what happens. And so I think that's taken us pretty far. Just that mindset of like, what if?
Yeah, it's like the beginner's mind in meditation, you know?
Oh,
bring that fresh perspective and you clear out like all the other assumptions and just see what happens. It's really hard to do, frankly, but it sounds like you're succeeding at this. I know there's a lot of questions coming in. I'm just going to take a couple that people dropped in already. Folks are really curious about the courses that you're enrolled in, and I was as well. So if you don't mind sharing a couple, and
oh my gosh,
I can also, the ones that your favorites. I could tell you're taking a lot.
Course that I'm obsessed with right now is Kim Brophy's Applied Ethology course, Legs. I finished that. I'm about to start on it a second time. Her book is amazing too, Meet Your Dog. Love everything about it. It's a really, really holistic approach to dog companionship. Loved it. Loved everything about it. I'm enrolled in Michael Shikashio's masterclass, Aggression in Dogs, right now, which is fascinating. It's geared towards dog professionals, but I've found it really helpful to watch some of the case studies in there. In all of the other courses I've taken that are designed for pet parents, I haven't seen case studies. And I think one of the things that happens as a reactive dog pet parent is it can feel quite alienating, because it's not too often that you see other reactive dogs out, and there aren't many like large accounts on the internet that are sharing their reactive dog journey. So watching some of the case studies, like, oh, that behavior looks a lot like Bunny's, and watching how they worked through it from sort of start to resolution has been really, really helpful. I am enrolled in Dr. Amy Cook's Playway and Active Management through the Fenzi Dog Sport Academy. Incredible. I'm enrolled in 17 or 18 courses with FDSA at the moment. I am enrolled in, I can't remember the name of it, but it's with Ken Ramirez through the Karen Pryor Clicker Academy. I can't remember the name of it. It's such good stuff. What is it called when you teach an animal how to sample matching, match to sample, match to sample. Right. So you're like, I have two toys that are different. I have one toy that's the same as one of these toys. You hold up this toy and your learner is able to tell you which one you're holding up. So I've got a match to sample course with Ken Ramirez. There's 15 or 20 more that I can't even remember right now. I also am reading a bunch of books. Kathy Sadeo's Everything in Life is Free. Control Unleashed. All three of those books in the series. What else do I have? BAT 2.0, Behavior Adjustment Training 2.0. Those are great. I'm a big audiobook listener, and I find that a lot of these books, because they have like infographics in them, aren't available on audiobook, which kind of makes me sad. So I'm just slowly plodding through the books that I actually have to read and can't like take in while I multitask. What other courses? That's all I can remember at the moment.
No, it's such a great list. I'll just say I'm actually taking some of those courses as well. I think it's so funny. It's awesome. Like if we were in physical proximity, we would all be going to the same university, like Doggy University.
Totally.
And taking all the same classes.
That'd be so fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think community is so important, right? With learning this type of stuff, finding like-minded people. That's kind of one of the gaps I'm trying to fill with Petminded, actually. Because it's not necessarily isolating because you're doing this with your dog when you love your dog, but sometimes it's just so nice to have other peers and people who care similarly, because I love my friends, but
yeah,
they're not going to take Kim Brophy's course with me.
Right. Totally.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I remember another one that I'm loving. It's Suzanne Clothier's From Maddening to Maturity.
Oh, I've heard
perfect good timing for that one right now. That's great. It's a great one. It's like a three-hour seminar, so it's super digestible. And then of course I have all of the Lemonade conference videos to go through, and all of the Kindness is Essential, Not Optional videos from that conference to go through, and the Aggression in Dog conference. So I've got a lot of material waiting for me. There's so much out there, and there's so much free information out there too. Like the IIABC offers a lot of free content. Ethology University, or the Ethology Institute, has a lot of free courses as well. Anyways, there's a ton of free resources out there as well.
Yeah, I think if folks just Googled even dog cognition, they would find a ton of, Coursera has courses on this stuff, like just as a beginner. Thank you so much, Mariah, for listing these out. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I just saw that. I was like, that's smart.
Yeah, thank you. I can't type and talk at the same time. But I have one other question that people are interested in. It got a few likes. How about pups with low food drive, but also overexcitement with toys? I think this is specific to button training, but it's come up a few times. So I guess let's just talk about motivation and motivating the pups to continuing to do this work with you. Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, Bunny isn't very food motivated at all. She'll take food in certain environments, in certain contexts, but not always. But I never used food to train her with the buttons, because the first buttons that I chose to give her were things that were environmentally reinforcing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
most dogs want to go outside, most dogs want to play. So the reinforcer that I was using was environmental. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so are they talking, they're talking specifically with the buttons about how to motivate? I think the first step is just really getting to know your dog. Like, what are they motivated by? What do they like to do? Maybe there's a plant they like to chew on. Add plant as your first button.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just because a lot of dogs' first buttons are outside doesn't mean it has to be yours. This is a very individualized process, because all people are different and all dogs are different. So the first step is relationship, right? Then the buttons. First is listening to your dog, get to know your dog, build that relationship, and then give them some words. Figure out what they love.
I love that.
Otter loves humping a very specific pillow in my house. I should probably add a pillow button.
I love how you keep it real, because that's just the truth of it, right?
Oh,
It's
man.
not, it's, if that's what he wants, that's what he gets.
Yeah, right? I've loved, and become really passionate about the pre-MAC principle recently. So I'm using that a ton in my behavior mod with Bunny for reactivity, like really giving her agency to decide when and if we get closer to a trigger. And I try to use that as much as possible, because then, you know, you don't necessarily have to carry treats everywhere. There are so many environmental reinforcers every day when you're on a walk with your dog, that if you can learn what they really want, then you can just use that to train and communicate. And I think that's a really beautiful and easy and simple way of communicating with your learner.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's such a great place to start. And just again, the parents' mindset, just getting to that place with the dog and getting to really know them before being like, you will learn buttons because I think you should.
Yeah.
No, I love it. Folks, if you have any questions, we have a couple of minutes. I do want to be respectful of Alexis's time, but feel free to drop some in. And I appreciate the support with our troll. I kicked him out, so
There's
finally,
always a few.
I'm still learning Instagram. I feel like an old person when I say that, but
No, I am too. Like, I mean, there's new features like every second.
Yep, there are. And while folks are coming up with questions, I just want to remind you that Alexis is actually hosting a full 1-hour session for us next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and you can sign up for free. I will drop the link in the chat. It'll probably disappear very quickly because there are so many folks chatting here.
You can pin it if you want. I think if you hold and tap,
Oh,
be pinned to the top.
Oh, I love it. And thank you, Elena, for, she said, I'm Gen Z and still learning Instagram. And I see Philly here.
Yeah. Hi,
wow.
Phil.
Hi, Philly. I was meaning to email her back. She sent me some photos of Gator, who looks adorable. But okay, I'm going to take some questions because I'm getting totally sidetracked.
Okay.
Let's see. How old can a dog be to start with buttons? Ooh, that's a good one. So I bet people have lots of thoughts about that.
Yeah, so in humans, right, there's a critical learning period for language. I don't know if this is language with Bunny, but communication happens all the time regardless. I don't think there is a critical period for dogs. I don't think we've seen that. I think you can start at any age. Billy the cat, for example, I think was like 13 when she started the buttons with her human. She's got, I don't know, 30 or 40 now. And there are so many older dogs right now that are having great success. So I don't think there's a limit. I don't think there's any cap on when you can improve your listening and your relationship and your communication.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of mythology around senior dogs because, you know, people are like, old dogs can't learn new things, but actually it's good for their brains.
Totally.
And it prevents cognitive decline. So it's worth it to at least attempt. We have another really great question. Wondering if guide dogs could learn to communicate with buttons and visually impaired people could then connect even more. Have you seen any programs like that, or have you heard anything about people attempting to do this?
Not specifically. I mean, it would be like guide dogs in the home, right? Because I don't think it would be, I don't think it would make sense to like carry a button board out into the world. But I don't see why not. They make a loud noise. We're developing the app to be paired with a new button so that you can receive texts from your dog and in theory text them back. That's in the future. I mean, I don't see why they couldn't be used.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be a really interesting sort of new way to look at guide dogs and how they can support their persons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, one last question, and then I will let you go. Mariah wants to know, what is something you'd like all pet parents to know? I feel like that's a good one to end on. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's so important. You know, dogs are captive animals. And I think we have really unreasonable expectations for them in the modern day. So I feel like we have an even bigger responsibility to honor them as animals, to learn as much as we can about them, and to advocate for them in the public space, because they're truly complex and incredible beings, and they have so much to offer us if we let them and if we listen to them.
Yeah, for sure. Alexis, thank you so much. This was great. And folks, this is just a preview of all the fun things we'll be talking about next Thursday. So definitely sign up and come. The event is free. The goal of the entire week is to bring both scientists, but then also practitioners like Alexis, to talk about how they're implementing this new stuff, because it's fascinating, but it's probably not going to come into the public domain as quickly as dog parents would like, right? We still live in a world where people believe in dominance theory, unfortunately. So really excited to have folks like Alexis and Pilly, who I think is here. She is presenting on Monday. If you don't know who Pilly is, she is Chaser's human sibling and co-trainer. Chaser, the border collie who learned over 1,000 words. So
She's
please
one of
join
my
us.
favorite humans.
An amazing human, yes. Totally agree. And I guess same goes for you. So thanks again, Alexis.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been super fun.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Okay,
So
sounds
excited.
good.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.